multi-cloud and having the hybrid cloud kind of structure that we have. What we have seen in last 10 or little over a decade is the transformation, right? We started with having a dedicated bare metal host to a virtualized setup. And now we have cloud solutions available. And not just cloud, but we have multi-cloud solutions available. I think when cloud came in, a lot of us felt that, hey, now everything is going to, or all the business solutions are going to run out of the cloud. But even today, if you see, majority of us, we have something or the other run out of either our on-prem, in our own office network, or somewhere in colo location, or a combination of both, maybe the on-prem, colo, or even the cloud. So I'm more than happy to welcome the panel members here. To start with Prashant, Raman, Rajneesh, and Varun. So let's start with this. As I said, when we started, it was a bare metal, and then now we have seen the transition or the growth. Where do you see the next? We have also seen moving from even the virtualized to now containerization, and then now we have multi-cloud. Do you see that there is going to be another kind of aggregation where you have solution run out of any cloud, but as a consumer or as a user, you don't care where it is running, or you don't even know about from where the content is getting served? Prashant, if I can start with you.
Sure. Yeah. So in my view, I think the progression was natural, right? So virtualization really was the mother of cloud. So that took off, and then post that really, they wanted a solution to have an agnostic, cloud agnostic solution. That's what Kubernetes kind of came through. The next big thing, I'm not sure if it is going to change the paradigm of the cloud itself, but it is more of PaaS that Suresh mentioned, right? PaaS, serverless, and others really, right? So when you look at cloud native programming, if you're in the Kubernetes space or in the infrastructure as a service space, you are not going to leverage the full potential of cloud. So you will have to then look at PaaS solutions or serverless options. In my personal opinion, that is going to grow, and the adoption is also going to be based on how best I can leverage cloud. Hybrid will remain for quite some time, at least, maybe 2 decades or so, in my opinion, because large organization. I was one of the person who actually implemented the world's largest private cloud for a bank, Wells Fargo.
Interesting.
We moved more than 800 applications, and that continues its journey, and it's going to be there for another 3 decades or so. So hybrid cloud will be there for quite some time. Smaller enterprises might tend to be all cloud. Right? And large enterprises will have a combination of it. That's in short what I feel.
Got it. So the next one, maybe Raman, you can answer, is about when we think about building a DR solution, and especially the FAR DR. A lot of times we feel that, hey, since we are hosted out of cloud, we don't have to worry about building a DR maybe, right? Because they are so reliable. But we have seen situations like, I think very recently, AWS in Singapore region, they had an outage. And so if you have your services running out of just one cloud or one region, then that may become a business continuity issue. Now, if you have to think about building a DR, right? And in India, I think there are regulations coming up where if you have your data staying outside India, you might have to get it back to India, right, for your Indian customers. Now, if you have to build the FAR DR, in your opinion, how do we build that? Is it like going to another cloud? Because I think in today's situation, many cloud providers, they do not have another site in India, right? So, in your opinion, what should be the approach to build the DR?
DR is a compliance requirement in many of the organizations. And not having that is not an option. We need to have it in some of the companies like BFSI especially. But when you see the strategy about where to put it is very subjective. Having on a colo plus a public cloud If you are, say, into securities and BFSI, you need to have your on-premise data centers for sure, because the SEBI does not let you let the data go out, right? So for that sake, you need to have your own data centers, and you can have a local, regional DR on a public cloud. It gives you the flexibility of cost savings, because keeping your own DR site, you need to invest a lot of hardware, and which just lie and getting used once in a while. And mostly whenever we do the DR, it doesn't happen, right? So DRs are about to fail till the point you are not doing a quarterly DR run kind of things. So to the rescue and making it cost effective, public clouds come as this thing where you can have a DR on the cloud. But having said that, between the clouds, so we have seen that all the hyperscalers goes down. None of them can say that they have not gone down. And when it happens across the globe most of the time. Means the US region will be down, the Singapore region will be down, Indian region will be down. So yes, if you want to have a real kind of DR, you need to have between multi-cloud, say AWS and GCP or Microsoft kind of thing, but you have to pay. Because whenever you are doing a data transfer to replicate the data between the two different clouds, for one cloud it is egress cost to the internet, which eventually costs you a lot of bomb. So yes, so if it is a compliance requirement and you need to have a very robust infrastructure, which is like fail-safe, etc. Important things here as well, how do you redirect the traffic? If you're keeping your load balancers, your DNS on the cloud in which your infrastructure is as well hosted, then when that goes down, even your DR site become wasted, because your DNS as well goes down. Right, so very important to strategically locate those kind of pieces into different pieces, so that if one thing goes down, your whole infrastructure doesn't go down. So think first a lot before you decide on the whole strategy. If you don't have skill sets in terms of how each type of clouds work, because each type of cloud has its own way of working. So please use the partner ecosystem to leverage it, understand it, and then decide. Please do not go with anybody who says what. Use your own skills and technological knowledge to derive your safety, because you're talking about the safety here, not just running a mere workload.
Got it. Thank you. So Rajnish, if I can come to you for the next one. A lot of times when we build a solution, or when you decide to go with a particular cloud, every cloud has their own some local thing, right? For example, AWS, they have started talking a lot about moving to Graviton, because it's their own chip, and they say it is much cheaper and even much better than any other chip providers. Now, when you decide to build your application or modify your application to work on Graviton, then you're married to AWS, right? And then if you have to move out for whatever reason, be it cost or some other reason, then it becomes extremely difficult. So in your opinion, as an enterprise, what are some of the other things that we should thinking about that, hey, I'm building a solution which is cloud neutral, and if I have to, for whatever reason, if I have to move out, I'm ready all the time.
Marriages are, by design, by definition, they are designed to last for a lifetime, right? So I look at it in that way. While you can believe that you are going to get stuck with a particular platform, but there are a lot of other factors, Sanjay, that we have to think, as an enterprise technology professional. And I'll just go back a little bit, to see how these multiple cloud platforms or different types of platforms that you typically choose. In my current organization, which is an education technology company, versus the last one, which was Zee Entertainment, one of the largest media conglomerates. My cloud consumption here is 90% public cloud platforms, 10% enterprise. In Zee Entertainment, it was the reverse. 90% on-prem, we have taken a colo space, and 10% was on cloud, because we were dealing with high resolution content, so it has to be there, because otherwise I just can't afford that, right? Now, coming back to this question, while we can believe that we will get stuck, but I think this is a long-term call that we have to take. Once in a while, you will encounter some use cases of multi-cloud platforms. For example, you want a particular service which is absolutely the greatest on a different cloud platform. Like in our case, in one of the products, we actually found one database service on another cloud platform, amazingly well, doing amazingly well for us. So we picked that up. But largely, there are a lot of reasons which probably would merit a strong consideration that you stay married to one platform. So the biggest one that comes to my mind, and I always look at it very, very carefully, is data. When you are thinking about your applications running on multiple cloud platforms, you are advertently or inadvertently, you are actually spreading your data across, right? Now, how do you bring the data together? Because ultimately, we all talk about data analysis, data-driven decision-making, all of the things that you can do with data today. If you're not able to bring your data together in one place and, make sense out of it, and what happens if you start, your applications, start running your applications on multiple platforms? Your data is going all over the place. And to bring the data together, like Raman said, right, you have got all the egress cost. I mean, it's a huge costly operation to actually bring data together and start analyzing it in one place. Even if I have to, I migrated my applications to Graviton. I would probably not think twice, because I would like to ensure that my ecosystem of products, like we have got like 5-6 products, I would want them very, very specifically, at least 80-90% of them, those workloads to be running on one cloud, so that I'm able to keep the data together and analyze it. Now, how do you prevent yourself from getting logged into some of these situations? So for example, when I'm building a data warehouse, I will carefully choose whether I pick a native public platform service or something which works across the platforms, right? Like we were discussing. So those are the things that you carefully choose, where you know that, okay, even if there is a worst case scenario where you actually have to take that decision, I don't think it will ever come. Top 3 guys are kind of, they work in lockstep with each other. But you take those calls so that you are ensuring that you are able to manage things, between, amongst your constraints. So if you believe that you want a low maintenance data warehouse solution, you pick the right product, instead of picking something natively from that public platform. So that is how you manage. But there is, I believe, a lot of merit in sticking to, one platform, or largely one platform.
Yeah.
Sure.
So for the sake of clarity to the people, Intel versus AMD, so Intel is 50% expensive than AMD. Graviton is 10% more cheaper than AMD. So if you decide to move from Intel to Graviton, without doing anything, you're getting 60% of savings on the cloud. That is huge. And then when you do the reserve instances, etc., you get 50% more discount on top of that. So if you choose those kind of strategy, and carefully do it, because some of your niche workloads, means very specific workloads which may behave differently on Intel versus AMD versus Graviton. Most of the application, Java-based, Python-based, etc., work seamlessly on all the 3 platforms. So till the point you are not doing any compute-intensive work, the migrations are seamless between these 3 CPU families.
Yeah, largely, yes.
Got it. Thank you. All right, Varun. So what we have seen, since we have many options as a consumer, right? Many options in the cloud available. I think, these other cloud providers, they keep coming to us, and giving us better offers, and they promise a lot of stuff. So if at all you have to decide that, hey, moving from one cloud to another cloud, what are the factors that you would keep in mind? Of course, when they come and approach you, cost is one of the factors they talk about, or probably one of the strongest factors. But if at all you have to decide to move out, and I know Rajneesh is very loyal and he wants to stick to a particular cloud provider, but that may not be the case for everyone. So if you have to decide, what are the factors that you will have in your mind?
So here there are 2 different hats, right? I'll preface the conversation by saying that for us, cloud is actually essential to the business strategy, right? Our business is digitizing the supply chain for hospitals across the country, and even today, 95% of medicine in the country is like the technology that maintains it, inventory tax file, is on-prem, right? So for us, it is a fundamental transformational shift, and so cloud is crucial to how and what we do. Bringing transparency across the entire supply chain can't happen without it, right? So it's not an infra solution for us, like where we can say, let me swap it out with on-prem or colo. It is very, very crucial to what we're doing as a business. Having said that, for me personally, I've always believed that infrastructure in itself is a commodity. It was a commodity 15 years ago. It'll be a cheaper commodity 15 years from now, right? So the differentiation, and I think that by design, all the large public cloud providers are aware of this, right? And that is why the heavier investment is not in, let's say, opening a second data center in the country, right, to meet regulatory needs, but the heavier investment is in coming up with customized services which are tightly coupled and unique to them. Because that's the only differentiation that these clouds today can really lend to their customers. By design, I make sure that we are largely cloud agnostic, right? So whether you're choosing a database, whether you're choosing, let's say, a caching layer, so you can choose to use an SQS on AWS and then have a problem when you're migrating, or you can set up a Redis instance or a Memcache and use it to manage queues, right? Again, it's a small example, but the idea being you should know when you sign up for something, that when it's very easy and quick to use, it also means that you're getting locked in some way, and that's why it's by design so easy and quick to use. So I think that's a trade-off between what kind of engineering or development cost you want to incur versus how much optionality and de-risking you want for yourself. Because really, when you get stuck, right? And this is not just, I think, within cloud, but it's also relevant to cloud architecture in itself. So how you architect your entire platform and suite of products within your cloud can create problems later on. Coming to the question of what are the key kind of variables, the biggest one for me obviously has always been cost, right? So I think that goes nowhere. And simple example is, for example, if you have a lot of Windows infrastructure requirements, right? Windows Server, MS SQL, or anything of that sort, whether it's for in-house developed applications or purchased applications, Azure will provide you substantially better cost than AWS or GCP, right? Just due to licensing. GCP has some very nice kind of baked-in capabilities for Python level applications, right? So there are different kinds of things that work better on cost across them, and they'll obviously, it's a commodity at the end of the day, so they'll eventually compete on cost. For us, the decision has largely centered around the fact of engineering efficiency, developer efficiency, because more than, for us as a technology company, more than infrastructure cost, our human resource cost is the highest thing to optimize for, right? So if something can make my engineering team 10% more efficient, I'm happy to pay 30% more on infra for the time being, right? And so there, I think, at least as of now, because of the historical edge, AWS has gone the whole 9 yards in terms of the kind of stuff that you can do, both programmatically through CLIs, through integration into your own application and deployment workflows. And therefore, I would say that look at definitely cost as a top tier factor. And after that, depending on what your people to non-people costs are, look at engineering efficiency, because all of them, while their basic functionality is at par, there is a lot of nuance at scale that isn't at par. One thing we were discussing, if you recall, if you want to leverage spot instances, which is effectively bidding real time for free servers, right? So you pay anything from 30, 40 to 70, 80% less than what you would pay otherwise for that same virtual server or EC2 instance. Now, the cutoff timing there on GCP is, I think, 4 seconds. On AWS, it's 30 seconds, right? And as idempotent as you want to make your workloads, that 30 seconds is more than enough for you to wrap up most things and say that, okay, let me switch to a new cheaply bidded instance and continue doing this, right? And that saves 80% of cost. So it's in nuances like that, which you need to make yourself aware of. You have lots of partners in the ecosystem who can kind of spend that time with you and your team on figuring out what would work for you. But those are the things that really, I think, influence cost and developer efficiency, which I would say are the biggest factors when deciding to stay or move.
Thanks, Varun. And that's a segue to my next question to Prashant about the cost. I think when cloud came in, a lot of us as an industry, we felt that, hey, now we are moving away from CapEx model to more of an OpEx model. And then, of course, you have all the, the elasticity and all the other benefits that you get out of the cloud. But we then notice the huge surge, right, in the cost. And of course, I think, every company, every one of us have our own way of managing that. Varun talked about moving to Spot or, leveraging some of those other levers that you have running out of cloud. In your opinion, what are some of the things that you have done or you feel that we should think about to optimize the cost running out of any cloud?
That's a very loaded question, right? Because so I'll also touch on a couple of topics and then I'll
Sure.
comment if it's okay. First of all, the overall cloud architecture plays a very important role in how we manage cost also, right? Including service metering. Every layer, if you look at it. More complex your architecture, obviously it becomes a lot more difficult, right? So, and diverse is always extremely expensive, right? So if you kind of step back and look at even the first step in marriage, right? Where do I want to go? And if I'm setting up a program, right? My first instance is I create a JD for cloud architects, and getting a cloud agnostic architect is super complex. It's very complex, right? And you might get Azure, you might get AWS. If you want to have .NET and AWS, very difficult. If you Java and Microsoft, very difficult, and so on, right? So starting from the skill level, it becomes super difficult. Right? Now, moving from one cloud to another, the know-how of how each of these features work is also super difficult, right? Because Azure, if you look at app services, and if you compare that with AKS, yeah, it's the second layer actually, right? That entire network architecture, security architecture, all of that, starting from subscription management to the thing, is a whole lot of work. And then you come to the below layer of, Kubernetes, and then developers actually just churning in the code base and deploying it, right? So it's fairly complex, right, to do that. And of course, multi-cloud is approach that a lot of them take because they want to de-risk also, right? Large enterprises tend to give you a lot of discounts to begin with, but once you are there, the support kind of is limited, right? Yeah, it starts reducing. Yeah? So it becomes super difficult actually, and you want to, and every cloud provider are coming up with really niche features, like in the space of edge computing, AI, ML, and you can't, and it's not an easy switch. Yeah? So that's the pretext. Now, as a cost is concerned, right, there are quite a lot of things that you can do on every single layer. Yeah? So every cloud provider is starting to look at service metering with the elasticity in mind, right? So Elastic SQL Server, right? Elastic App Services, Elastic Kubernetes Services. Yeah? Pay per use is certainly a important aspect to kind of consider in quite a lot of these things. Yeah? So if I'm given a task to kind of look at the cost and try to reduce the cost in thing, as a post thing, it becomes a little too difficult because your architecture is already built in such a way that it is consuming that, and you to decouple that and then kind of change the architecture to be cloud or cost effective is a whole different thought paradigm. If I'm starting from fresh, you have to really plan that really well. Yeah? So then break through the layers. Yeah? So you don't have a concept of DMZ anymore from a private cloud to thing. You have to kind of protect it anyway. But the front end piece of it, right? So you could, as an example, make it very static based, right? You could have a static content load from blobs as well, actually. Yeah? Azure has a way to do that fairly easily. AWS and Google are starting to try and leverage that concept, but it's not fully there, right, in those two. However, even Azure with blobs, you have some constraints basically, right? So if you have JavaScript calling certain dynamic aspects of it, it doesn't let you do that. So you have to build certain things on top of it. Yeah? So you need to plan that. Blobs are obviously much cheaper than your app services or Kubernetes services. Yeah? But the moment you use Blob, architecture has become sticky, right? So that's where I was kind of trying to connect, right? So it's a super complicated topic from a cloud point of view. So if you made a choice that I will always be cloud agnostic, then I don't have to, I will never worry about Lambdas to Azure functions or those kind of things. And then my layer is all around AKS or the Kubernetes clusters, basically. Yeah? But I'm just trying to cover various topics because not everybody goes with the thing. And if you have a small application, right, and it's not really global in nature, Kubernetes might tend to be an overhead as well, actually. App services can perform better, can provide the scale and everything that AKS does as well. So that's one layer, right? App services usually where there are no orchestrations, where there are no heavy orchestrations that are involved, and your load balancing works either with usage of APIM or any similar load balancers, then it's a different ball game. And then again, governance, compliance comes along as well. Right? I try to differentiate end user applications to internal applications to try and do that. Right? End users applications are a lot more riskier in nature, a lot more out there. So you need to ensure that it is DR available, highly available. You need that for most applications, but you know, given the situation we are in, US recession, cloud cost is a major concern, right? So everybody are trying to come back to see, let's try and make it as cost efficient as possible, right? And there you make a choice whether you really need a multi-regional DR, etc., etc. So and if you choose not to do that, then there are quite a lot of different cost factors that you can apply. So you choose to have in two availability zones, and every data center costs with the features are different. Like Ireland cost to Switzerland cost to India cost to US cost is all different, basically, right? So you could make a choice based on whether you really need that global nature, and you can choose data centers which are less cost effective as well. Yeah. So yeah, that's one layer, and then the data layer as well, right? So Oracle, most complexity in data migrations used to be around the data layer because that's the most expensive one, and a lot of our workloads, Suresh had a slide which said 500 million applications. I'm guessing quite a lot of them used Oracle as well, right? But then a lot of enterprises are now, to become cost effective, are trying to move away from it, or partner now, Larry, Oracle and Microsoft have come to an agreement as well, right? But then that's, we have to wait and watch on that. On the data side of things, you have to try and see how can we make it a lot more pay-per-use kind of model, right? So segregate your data workloads to say this is archived data, try and save on that as well. And NoSQL is a very important consideration, right? And NoSQL is not only a thought paradigm shift in terms of solid versus base principles, it's also a cost factor as well, right? So you have your documents store or GraphSQL, it actually helps in quite a lot of that. So it's a very broad topic, but we'll
Yeah, thanks, Prashant. So some of the things that what we have done, in fact, at Games 24/7, for us again, it's very spiky, right? I mean, when we have IPL or World Cup, we see, almost 90-degree surge in traffic. But some of the things that we have done to contain the cost. One is on the non-prod utilization. We were, it was costing roughly 40% of overall, right? All non-prod and production combined. So what we did, one was, we were trying to reduce the wastage. So we brought that kind of visibility to our developers that, hey, here is the infrastructure that you have and here is how much it is costing. And then we, kind of broadcasted the message that, hey, during non-working hours, can we not shut it down so that we can reduce some cost? And then we found a way to politely shaming people around, end of the day that, hey, by the way, your infrastructure is still up and this is how much it is costing per day. And that has seen, we have seen a significant reduce, cost now on the non-production, which is like, it used to be roughly 400K a month, which is now less than 100K a month. So, some of those things that we have applied. Now, moving to the next one, Varun, if you can pick that. I think you talked about that you have some workloads run out of on-prem and some, or maybe many out of cloud. When do you decide what to move to cloud and what to run out of colo or on-prem setup?
Got it. So I think that answer would vary. One sec, before we get there, I completely agree. On cost, what you mentioned, it's exactly what we went through. So before this, I was, like many years ago, I was part of the technology leadership at Practo. And just democratizing, so anywhere where you have, let's say, hundreds of developers and lots of microservices and all, it just goes out of control, right? Like, so you cloud and access democratizes the access to infrastructure and people go crazy. So I think governance was the takeaway from us from that as long as you have some kind of governance and visibility on costs on a monthly basis, like that's the most effective way to optimize cost. Coming to on-prem versus cloud, so I'm a very firm believer that everything should be cloud. However, if you look at, let's say, a hospital environment, right? There is an application that is analyzing X-ray scan, right? It's a little bit of AI that does that. Now, if you were to say deploy that on the cloud and there was a network outage, would you postpone surgery because internet nahi hai? And it's not as simple as hotspot chala do, right? Because there are security concerns and all of that, right? So typically hospitals, a large majority of them still use on-prem and colo kind of setups, right? And I understand the need and reason, but I think for me personally, there are very few isolated use cases like that. Another one for us in particular at API was the fact that we have a device lab. So mobile application testing, especially if you want to do very nuanced performance testing across a range of devices. Our supply chain application, right, which is what our our delivery executives use across the country, it needs to be performance tested on a wide range of low-end devices. That kind of service, even BrowserStack wasn't offering back then. So that was the kind of thing where, on-prem was the most cost-effective and rather the best answer for the business requirement. So there are definitely a few of those. There was also one, I remember many years ago, where you had to send a lot of SMSs, gateways weren't what they are today, USSD use cases and all that. And so you had devices that you had to physically connect. Lastly, there's one very powerful use case which we had on the machine learning, artificial intelligence side. If you're processing, specifically if you're processing video in AI, right? Any kind of ANN or CNN that you're using, the costs on data are exorbitant. And being cloud agnostic there is not really a choice. Like, so many of the libraries are so tightly coupled, I can't port those things to Graviton, like even for the next 1 year if I try, right? And what happens there, I think something we discussed, if you have large volumes of data that either for practical business or regulatory reasons you need physical access to, I think colo and on-prem beat public cloud any day, because getting 5, 10, 50 terabytes of data or petabytes of data out of your public cloud and giving it to anyone or putting it anywhere else is just something that takes too much time, too much cost, etc. Right? So if you have some of those kind of applications where you feel that the workload is not, let's say, externally linked, like the kind of processing you're doing or the experimentation on models that you're doing, having those GPU machines on-prem is a huge boon, not only from a cost and performance perspective, but in terms of the business flexibility that it offers you with what you do with the results and the outcome, right? If you do need to move it around, it's easy to pick up a box and move it from one place to another. Not so much if you're on the public cloud.
I think, all the great insights, and I know we are all tech people and we want to definitely discuss a lot of things. We can of course connect offline. But thank you, gentlemen, for all the wonderful answers and sharing your insights.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yash. Hey, I'm Yash. I had one question. I just wanted to know a little bit of if any one of you have an experience of switching between like AWS and GCP, because I think this was it was referred, right? There's of course cost benefits that come out of it, but I just wanted to also get a flavor of what are some of the like the non-functional challenges of moving from one cloud to the other cloud.
So let me take this question. So switching from one cloud to second cloud is not an easy task, number one. From the fundamental things, everybody will say that I have an equivalent of this available there. But when you just try to have a seamless migration, it is not possible. Especially when you have lots of data and you cannot afford downtimes, it's a nightmare for you. Okay, and trust me, you need to have a 6 month of POC being done, having equivalent being pulled up there, doing the night shift, and despite that, when you migrate, a lot of things will not work. So whenever if you are switching the cloud just for the sake of money, I think that is not the right decision, because you are not there on cloud for saving money. If you want to save money, please be on premise. Yeah, fact of life, okay. Or you have to be the hybrid. Both will work for you. But if we go to cloud just to make sure you are agile, nimble, quick to business, and speed to business to launch products. That is why we are there. If we keep cost in the center and try to move technology around it, that might not be the answer. But moving from one cloud to second cloud, if there is no solid reason for you technology-wise, it's not wise.
And also, just to add, like I think Varun mentioned that, so your engineering velocity, right? I mean, just think you suddenly move from, let's say, AWS to GCP or vice versa, right? I mean, all your engineering skills, the teams have to adapt, and that's not going to be easy. So fully go with what Raman said. I mean, 10-20% cost efficiencies. I think there are a lot of ways you can do on the cloud where you are, right? There are a lot of other factors that you should consider before you take that decision. Not an easy one for sure, but you need to have a credible set of reasons, not just one or two reasons to actually make that transition.
I think just adding to that, I've done migrations from Azure to AWS in the past, right? And something we continue to do because we've inorganically acquired a bunch of companies. They have their own legacy systems. So migrating from on-prem colo and other clouds to our cloud of choice at the moment, right, is something that is part of life. If functional requirements are addressed and functional nuances are addressed, like Raman and mentioned, like there are too many, like the default parameter group for a Postgres database on one cloud versus another cloud of the same 11.13 version, right, will be different. And in one small way, let's say query timeouting or garbage, like there are too many nuances. So definitely if all of that is covered, the one kind of other very tangible takeaway is it cannot be a no downtime migration is my takeaway, right? Simply because of DNS, right? DNS is a bit of legacy infrastructure that we have on the internet, and therefore the minute you actually point from A to B, that cutover is not blue-green ever, and it's not seamless ever, and you can't also, because in large-scale applications, the velocity of transactions, like the writes are so high that you cannot kind of say that I'll run both parallelly and across two different public clouds, keep syncing the data behind. वो होएगा ही नहीं, right? Even in co-locate, even within the same cloud, it can be challenging. So it will be a downtime, and that's something to kind of keep in mind, that whether it is 6 hours or 12 hours will vary depending on what geographies you're catering to, one country, multiple countries, etc. But I don't think that it can be done without downtime, so that's something to keep in mind if you're migrating clouds.
Yeah, so I think the gist is, when you're deciding to go to the cloud, plan properly, do the POC, whatever you want to do. If it is, I think Varun mentioned that if your workload is heavy on Microsoft technology, maybe the preferred cloud would be Azure. But once you decide, go ahead with that, and if you have to definitely plan for the move, plan in advance, because otherwise it's going to be nightmarish.
Hello. This is on the cost optimization part. So there have been many niche companies from Israel, India, and US, especially on if your application is on containerized architectures. So they're coming out with proposal of running everything, if it is stateless, on preemptible or spot nodes, whatever you call it as, without any downtime. So has there been, because we are doing the pilot, we did it in the previous organization, it's coming out well, the results. So has there been any view or any market take on that and how it is?
I mean, spot instances definitely, as we discussed, right? I mean, one of the best ways to, reduce the cost. In fact, we run a product on AWS where we are remotely, proctoring the examinations. And I think we have been able to reduce our infrastructure cost by 80%. And, that's, AWS keeps coming back to us and asking us, how are you, running your examinations at such a low cost? So, but again, cost, you have to measure it, you have to be very diligent about it. Like every morning when we get up, we look at ke kal kitna kharch kiya, because otherwise there is no way. You have to be that finicky, you have to be that disciplined and rigorous with the cost. Every day you look at cost and saying ke kaun sa developer hai, what is the cost that they are incurring, what is the product, raat ko kyo chalaya jab sab so rahe the, right? You have to go into those details and try to minimize and see how you can optimize using spot instances. That's definitely a great example. But be very disciplined in measuring it and then controlling it.
So what we have done other than Spot, for us, any stateless, of course, I think no-brainer. We can move to Spot. But some of the other things that we have done is, one is, if you know that you're running on, say, EC2, right, and yours is, say, stateful application, you cannot move to Spot kind of instance because then that's a problem. So then maybe signing up for, the savings plan and the long-term savings plan, that gives you, again, a great lever to optimize the cost.
Also, I can just say the Israeli company, one of the very early ones, was a company called Spotist. We were one of their first 5 implementations at Practo in 2017, right? Now they're acquired by NetApp. So I can say that I'm a firm believer, as long as you have architectural and engineering capability to make your applications a little idempotent and stateless, it's a huge impact on cost. Even today, AWS and the others have equivalent services, has something called Amplifier. So all front-end applications, React.js applications, these single SPA applications which are entirely powered by APIs, they're effectively stateless, or the state's maintained in the browser, right, on the edge. And therefore, we don't use EC2, Kubernetes, anything. So we use Amplifier equivalents, which are basically serverless hosting for all front-end applications on the cloud. Or you have, also, if you have availability and global distribution, you have now CDNs that are offering the same thing, and it eliminates the need for anything on any of these cloud providers altogether. So you should definitely go down that path. It's a safe journey.
Thanks, that helps.
Hi, I have a question on, of course, we discussed that as a hybrid strategy where we will have different clouds. Either we will, even if we have Azure, we will probably have AWS and Google Cloud, and portfolio companies will keep adding, and then we will have a hybrid environment. So any thoughts on how do we do the managed services post, so there is one thing is deploying and having a multi-cloud environment. The other thing is managing that over the years. So I would like to hear your thoughts on how do you manage the cost of the managed environment as well as the skills associated, because you would need engineering teams for all different kind of clouds and so on. So what is the
On the managed solution.
Yeah, and I think to the points that were made earlier, they're all very important for managed services anyway, right? But I think one thing that we didn't touch on was also infrastructure as code and things like that. So your overall DevOps, DevSecOps, CI/CD, don't miss that, right? That's quite crucial to ensure your deployments work seamlessly and all that. As for managed services is concerned, right, you would need to have expertise on every part of the cloud provider. Yeah? So you cannot, I mean, if you're able to, a very small percentage of people could really be strong across cloud. Yeah? So that's the important point that we have to make note of, right? But you would have expertise from every single cloud provider that you're supporting. So that is the first important thing, right? So you should have the teams which supports each.
Yeah, we
And
do
then-
have, but maintain, having, with so much of attrition and other things, it's difficult to
is,
sustain
Yeah,
what we build,
it's-
right? So
It's a persistent problem across the world, not just in India. So it is there. But because the people are one concern, and you have to have the teams. You probably have some backups, and to ensure that the key people are covered, etc. Right? But also another point from a managed service across cloud is a single glass of pane. Few companies try to offer that aggregated view of all the cloud costs, etc., in one single thing, but it is still, in my view, a myth. It is not doing a great job in everything, right, in aggregating that. Having that kind of view, at least in bits and pieces, still helps quite a lot, right, because then you have a view of what is happening across your cloud patterns, right? So aggregated in one place.
is there any tool or anything which gives us kind of a dashboard across different clouds and have one view to the CIO kind of people who would be able to see, what's happening in different spaces?
So currently we have tools where you can have 3 cloud costs in 3 different tabs. Eventually, it's as good as opening their individual console. But if you see a single console from where you can make the whole sense of everything, no. So what we do is we build our own consoles for that sake, where we pull the data from different data sources, billing, say, from Azure, GCP, or AWS, put it into some data lake, and then do the data churning on top of that, and try to abstract the cost as per the BU-wise, vertical-wise, CPU-wise, type of service-wise. We have to do it ourselves most of the time. Currently, there is no product into the market which can give you that kind of visibility across your workloads.
Okay.
So
if you find one, please do let me know.
Yeah, of course,
Same here.
I'm looking for that. So,
Yeah, so if I can add to the managed solution versus your own, self-managed. The thumb rule is, if you have a critical workload and you don't have skills, go for managed solution. But if you can manage it on your own and it is not super critical, then it is better to manage.
It goes with the company strategy. If you have strategy to have in-sourcing and also have a strategy to build things, capabilities in-house, then obviously it becomes difficult to ramp up different skills. So that's what I was coming from.
But I think, my experience with all the, with due respect to if anyone is from that, work stream, the experience with, it depends upon, first of all, who you are, right? Whether you are a big organization, small organization, you are a tech organization. But the first choice is always to manage it on your own. You should have those skills, at least basic skills, the people who can govern it. Most of the times we think, you just give it out to someone and they will run it. I think it doesn't work out because you will never have a, strong opinion or view about, why they are doing those things. So your ability to understand, those things is very important. Yeah. As much as possible, keep that checks and balances with you, control with you. Hire, it might take some time, there will be attrition, yes, but my experience largely with partners, small and big, has not been very great because of a lot of reasons. Best is to have a team of 5-10 engineers, cloud, DevOps, all put together who can actually run the show for you, do the cost controls, but don't just leave it out to saying that managed service to wo ho jayega. I think it's
on the single dashboard, I think the most effective thing, like even we've not found any tool that does it properly, but all of them have data exports, and all of them work very seamlessly with basic ETL, which you'll have anyway within the organization, right? So just extract the billing data out from all of them on a daily basis, put it into your lake, and then your analytics team can give your CIO the kind of visibility, consolidated visibility that they need.
Yeah.
I think so. We have enough indication now to indicate that we are running out of time. So thank you, everyone.